My 32-year-old son called me the worst mother in the world because I refused to skip a life-saving operation for me just to pay for his daughter's private school. And you know what? He's right, I chose myself. I'm almost 50, my name is Sarah, and I probably should have learned by now not to expect surprises from life. But here I am, sitting with this pain that drives me crazy, and with a phone call that turned everything upside down. It was exactly 3 weeks ago, on a Monday. I usually try not to think about my hip joint, although it doesn't let me forget about it for a second, especially when I wake up at night and even the sheet feels heavy. The doctor said, "Sarah, you need a total replacement. The sooner, the better, otherwise your other leg will start to fail." The price tag was exactly those $40,000 that I had been saving for the last 10 years, setting aside every spare penny, denying myself everything that wasn't absolutely necessary. I worked as an accountant in a small firm, always keeping my budget on a tight leash. This money was my hope, my ticket to a normal life where I could simply walk in the park without thinking about how I'd limp back. The surgery was scheduled in 2 weeks, and I could almost see the finish line. That Monday, after work, when I barely managed to drag myself to the couch, my son, Daniel, called. He's 32, works 2 jobs, has a wife, Emily, and a daughter, my granddaughter, the adorable Jenna, who is 12. Daniel doesn't call just to chat. He usually sends short texts. If he calls, it means something's gone wrong. I immediately felt that cold knot in my stomach. He started by joking about the weather, asked about my health. I sensed he was hiding something, his voice was too cheerful, fake. "Mom, listen, I have a big favor to ask." "A very big one," he finally said, and his tone became serious. "Remember we talked about a private school for Jenna? Oakwood Academy." "Of course, I remember. It's his and Emily's dream, but it's also an astronomical amount of money. Tuition there is about $20,000 a year. I always told Daniel he should be realistic, that public school isn't bad either, but he's obsessed with the idea that Jenna needs the best to get ahead. I know he loves his daughter." "I remember, Danny, so what?" He hesitated. Then he exhaled, as if jumping off a cliff. "She got in. Jenna passed all the tests, she's top of her class, but we don't have enough money. We need the initial deposit and the first year's tuition. $20,000, Mom. We could take out a loan, but with our current payments, it would be simply unbearable. I'm asking you, Mom, you're the only one who can help us. I know you have that money for the surgery, but can you wait a year, too? You can do it. And this is Jenna's future. It's just a year." I sat there, pressing the phone to my ear, and my legs started throbbing so badly it felt like the bone was about to burst. I listened as Daniel painted a picture of the wonderful start this would give Jenna, how she would get into the Ivy League later, how it would change everything. I only heard one thing: you can wait. Wait until the pain becomes unbearable, until I completely stop sleeping, walking, living. Wait until the pain spreads to my entire skeleton. I kept that number in mind, $40,000. $20,000 for him, $20,000 for me, half of my hope. He knew the surgery was already scheduled. He knew how much I was looking forward to it. I couldn't answer right away. I was just breathing into the phone. He took my silence for indecision. "Mom, come on, is it that hard for you? You can still walk, just with a cane. But this is your granddaughter's future. Don't you want Jenna to be successful? You always said family is the most important thing." There it was. Pure manipulation. Shame. Guilt. Whenever he needs something, he remembers my values. I saw not a grown man in front of me, but a little boy trying to wring a candy out of his mother. But the stakes were too high. Not candy. My legs. My life without pain. I slowly uttered, "Danny, I can't. The surgery is scheduled in 2 weeks. The doctor said." And then he exploded. What I heard next wasn't a shout, it was a cold, poisonous whisper. The very same one that rang in my head when I wrote the title of this post. You are the worst mother in the world, Sarah. You always think only of yourself. Always. It's just a school. You chose an old, worn-out bone over your granddaughter's future. You have no heart. He hung up. I was left sitting in silence, with a throbbing leg and that ringing judgment in my ears. And the moment the pain in my leg became unbearable, I made a decision. And it wasn't in Jenna's favor. I called the clinic to confirm the surgery and pay the remaining balance. It felt horrible, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was defending myself. And then I got a message from Emily. The $20,000 text message from my daughter-in-law was the first clear sign that they weren't just asking, they were demanding. And what happened next with my savings account made my blood run cold. The silence after Daniel hung up was deafening. It wasn't just the absence of sound, it was the abrupt cut of a relationship that had been strained for years, now officially severed by a $20,000 price tag. My head was swimming, not just from the pain, but from the realization that my own son saw me purely as a bank account with legs. And not even good legs at that. I sat there on the couch, rubbing my hip, feeling the dull, grinding ache, a constant, terrible reminder of why those $40,000 were non-negotiable. I mentioned that I confirmed the surgery. I did. After Daniel's venomous attack, a strange kind of cold clarity settled over me. It was a survival instinct. I called Jude's clinic and spoke to the coordinator, confirming the pre-op appointment and making sure the final transfer for the full amount, which was sitting in my high-yield savings account, was scheduled. I needed to move fast before I let the guilt Daniel had thrown at me chew away at my resolve. I felt like a general securing a fortress against a siege led by my own family. Then came Emily's text message. It wasn't a question, a plea, or even an apology for Daniel's outburst. It was a single, curt message that arrived 15 minutes later. Emily, we need the $20,000 wired by end of day Friday. The academy won't hold the spot past the deadline. Daniel is right. You need to do this for Jenna. She deserves this. No, hi, Sarah. No, how are you? Just a financial ultimatum, wrapped up in the assumed moral superiority of doing it for the grandchild. The audacity made me physically sick. It confirmed my darkest suspicion, they had planned this. They saw my operation date, my lifeline, as their deadline. They thought they could pressure me into sacrificing my mobility for their ambition. I didn't reply immediately. I needed to know exactly how much they expected me to suffer. That night, the pain in my hip kept me awake, of course. I took an extra pain pill, lay there and tried to rationalize Daniel's behavior. Did he really think I could just wait? Did he truly believe the pain was just a little inconvenience? I flashed back to Thanksgiving 2 years ago, when I tried to help carve the turkey and my leg gave out, sending me straight to the floor, shattering the good porcelain platter. Daniel just stood there, looking annoyed that I had ruined the moment, not concerned that I was hurt. They've seen me struggle, but they've never truly seen my struggle. The next morning, Tuesday, I decided to check my savings account again. Just a quick check to calm my nerves, to see the comforting $40,000 balance ready for the transfer to the clinic. I logged into the bank's portal. The screen loaded. My breath caught in my throat. The current balance was $20,000. $20,000 was gone. Just vanished. I sat staring at the screen, heart hammering against my ribs. I thought it was a bank error, a glitch. I frantically scrolled through the recent transactions. And there it was, 2 days prior, a large outgoing wire transfer labeled, D. Miller, tuition deposit. Daniel's full name is Daniel Miller. My bank accounts were separate. My passwords were secure. The only way he could have accessed my account was through the joint safety deposit box key I kept in the house, which held the bank security token I used for large wire transfers, or by having access to my old, shared documents. Suddenly, the phone call on Monday wasn't a desperate plea, it was a distraction. He called to gauge my resistance after he had already taken the money. He wanted to hear me say yes, so he could claim it was a loan, not outright theft. He must have done it over the weekend, before he called. My hand started shaking so badly I dropped my phone. This wasn't just about a school, it was about betrayal, about Daniel crossing a line I never imagined he would dare touch. He didn't just take the money, he effectively stole my surgery. He left me exactly half the amount, the precise amount he needed, knowingly leaving me with insufficient funds for the operation that was 2 weeks away. I tried to call Daniel. Straight to voicemail. I tried Emily. Voicemail. I felt a surge of cold, pure rage that was far more intense than any physical pain I'd felt. This wasn't just a conflict, this was a war they had declared. I had exactly 2 weeks, half the money, and a throbbing leg that reminded me every minute that my future had just been stolen by the very people I was supposed to love and trust. And I had to figure out how to get it back, because now, choosing myself wasn't a preference, it was the only way I wouldn't end up crippled. When I faced Daniel and Emily about the stolen $20,000, Daniel didn't deny it. He just smiled, looked me straight in the eye, and told me, "It's already spent, Mom. Now what are you going to do?" The feeling of seeing that $20,000 missing was worse than any pain spike in my hip. It wasn't just money, it was the ultimate act of disrespect, a declaration that my pain, my future, and my carefully planned life were disposable footnotes to their narrative of upward mobility. My fury stabilized into something cold and analytical. I couldn't just call the police, he's my son, and involving law enforcement would burn the bridge permanently, something I wasn't entirely ready to do, yet. I needed to confront them, to see their faces, and understand how they justified this theft. The confrontation happened that Wednesday, 2 days after Daniel's initial call. I called them and said I needed to see Jenna immediately. I used her name as bait, they wouldn't refuse that. They agreed to meet at their house that evening. The drive there was torture. Every bump in the road sent a jolt of white-hot agony through my hip, but I forced myself to focus on the plan. No screaming, no tears, just hard facts and unyielding resolve. When I arrived, the atmosphere was superficially cozy. Jenna was doing homework at the kitchen table, oblivious to the emotional bomb ticking in the room. Emily offered me tea with a forced, brittle smile. Daniel was leaning against the counter, arms crossed, looking defensive and slightly smug. "Jenna, honey, Grandma loves you very much," I said, kissing her forehead. "I need to talk to your parents now, okay?" Once Jenna was upstairs, I put my cane down and walked right up to the kitchen table, forcing myself to stand tall despite the screaming agony in my leg. I pulled up the banking app on my phone and placed it on the table between them. The screen displayed the damning transaction, D. Miller, tuition deposit. $20,000. I didn't yell. My voice was a low, steady rumble. "The surgery is scheduled in 10 days. You took half the money. You stole my operation, Daniel." Emily looked away immediately, a flush creeping up her neck. But Daniel? He didn't even flinch. He walked over, picked up the phone, examined the screen, and then slowly placed it back down. He wore that same fake, unsettlingly calm expression he had on the phone. "Yes, I did," Daniel stated simply, shrugging. "And I wired the money to Oakwood this morning. It's done. Jenna starts next week." They confirmed it. His admission was so blunt, so devoid of remorse, it took my breath away. "How could you, Daniel? Did you really think you could just take it? This money was for me to walk again." He leaned in, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper, the mask of civility finally cracking. "And what did you expect, Mom? You weren't going to help us. You were going to spend $40,000 on yourself when your only granddaughter needed a future. You're 50, you've had your life. Jenna is 12. This is the only chance we have. We were desperate, but you were just selfish." "Desperate? You stole from your crippled mother." "I took what was rightfully owed to my daughter's future," he hissed back. "And it's not theft, Mom. It's a loan. We'll pay you back. Maybe next year. Maybe in 2 years. You can reschedule the surgery. Emily finally spoke, her voice shaky but firm. Look, Sarah, we know this is hard, but it's done. The money is spent. You have $20,000 left. Maybe you can find a cheaper clinic? Or get a loan? You think after this, I would ever help you again? My voice trembled with suppressed rage. You used my own hard-earned money and my medical emergency as leverage. This is emotional blackmail and financial abuse, Daniel. I will not reschedule. I will not take a loan. I pushed the phone closer to him. You have 2 days to put that $20,000 back in my account. 2 days. Or I will call the police and file a report for grand theft. Daniel laughed. It was a short, sharp, ugly sound. Go ahead, Mom. You think I care? You call the police, and I'll tell them it was an unsecured loan for my daughter's education. A gift, perhaps. How are you going to prove I stole it? The paper trail just shows a transfer from your account to the school, a deposit made by the grandmother. Good luck convincing a judge to ruin your grandson's future over a delayed hip replacement. You'll just look spiteful and selfish. The tension was so thick I could barely breathe. The air felt heavy, metallic. He had considered every angle. He hadn't just stolen the money, he had neutralized my ability to retaliate legally without destroying his life completely, a choice he knew I would hesitate to make. He was banking on my maternal instinct overriding my self-preservation. I grabbed my cane, the movement sending a fresh wave of blinding pain through my leg. I stared him down, feeling every ounce of love I had for him turn into bitter ash. You have 10 days until my surgery. You won't pay me back in 2 days, I know that. But you need to know this, Daniel. If I am forced to postpone this surgery, I will never forgive either of you. And you will not only lose a mother, but Jenna will lose the grandmother who pays for her college tuition, because I will make sure of that. I left, trembling, not from the pain in my leg, but from the cold, ruthless calculation I had just witnessed in my son's eyes. He had called my bluff. The countdown had begun, and now I had to find $20,000 in 10 days or face a future crippled by a debt owed to my own son's selfish greed. I found an obscure loophole in the Academy's financial agreement that could force Daniel to give the money back. But exploiting it meant destroying Jenna's first day of school, and I suddenly faced a moral choice: my ability to walk, or my granddaughter's peace of mind. After that brutal confrontation, the atmosphere between us was toxic. Daniel and Emily stopped answering my calls or texts. It was a complete, calculated silence, a strategy to wait me out until the surgery date, now just 7 days away. My leg felt like it was encased in concrete and fire. Walking became a series of short, agonizing shuffles. I was taking painkillers every 4 hours, just to function. I spent the next 2 days obsessively researching. My career as an accountant meant I was good at digging into financial details, and I wasn't going to spend $20,000 on a lawyer just to prove a point to my son. I went after the source of the conflict, Oakwood Academy. I found their financial aid and enrollment agreement documents online, dense, boring documents that most parents probably just skimmed. I was looking for a breach, a penalty, anything that would make their $20,000 payment non-refundable or, better yet, subject to immediate clawback under specific circumstances. The payment was secured, yes, but what about the contract terms? Late Thursday night, fueled by black coffee and sheer desperation, I found it. Buried deep in Section 4, Subclause C, the Enrollment Status Verification Clause. It stated that while the initial deposit was non-refundable after the student started classes, it was contingent upon the timely provision of all required documentation, including verifiable proof of current residential address and the student's complete medical and immunization records, all due 3 days prior to the start of the first term. Jenna's first day of school was Monday. The documentation deadline was Friday. That was tomorrow. I remembered something Daniel had mentioned weeks ago, complaining about the paperwork. He had specifically lamented a required tuberculosis test result that had expired and how hard it was to get a new appointment on short notice for an updated school submission. I was pretty sure they hadn't gotten it done yet. My mind raced. If the required medical documents were incomplete by the Friday deadline, the Academy's contract allowed them to nullify the enrollment, declare the student ineligible for the term, and, crucially, process a partial refund of the deposit, less a $5,000 administrative fee. Partial refund meant $15,000 would be returned. It wasn't the full amount, but $15,000 plus my existing $20,000 was $35,000. It was still short of the $40,000, but it was enough to call the clinic, beg for a payment plan for the last $5,000, and keep my surgery date. It was my only way out. The moral dilemma was sickening. To execute this, I would have to call the school, identify myself as the grandmother who was concerned about the accuracy of the submission, and point out the missing immunization update. I wouldn't be lying, I'd be using my knowledge of their negligence to activate the penalty clause. The direct result? Jenna, who was already excited, who had picked out her new uniform and backpack, would arrive at Oakwood on Monday only to be turned away. Her dream, the one Daniel had stolen my money for, would be instantly shattered, and on her first day, no less. Daniel and Emily would face the public humiliation of their daughter being rejected due to incomplete paperwork, and they would be forced to scramble to get Jenna back into her public school, all while the $15,000 refund was processed back to the source of the original payment, which was my bank account. This was the turning point. I had the power to reclaim my life, my health, and my savings, but the cost was inflicting emotional damage on my 12-year-old granddaughter who was entirely innocent in this. Could I choose my mobility over Jenna's emotional well-being? Was I really the selfish monster Daniel claimed I was? I called the clinic again, my voice tight. I need to confirm the payment process. If I pay $35,000 on Friday, can we still hold the spot for the surgery next Wednesday, and can we discuss a small, $5,000 payment plan? The coordinator was hesitant. It's highly unusual, Sarah. We prefer the full amount up front. But let me speak to the billing department. I had less than 24 hours. The phone was in my hand, the Oakwood Academy admissions number already pulled up. My finger hovered over the call button. I could save myself, but I would crush Jenna in the process. The pain in my hip flared up, a sharp, undeniable command. Walk or sacrifice. I had to choose. I made the call. It was a choice between a cane for life and destroying the single most important day for my granddaughter. But the real surprise wasn't the money, it was who showed up at my doorstep with a check, and what they had to say about Daniel. The choice felt like an ethical razor wire stretched across a chasm of pain. My finger was shaking over the call button for Oakwood Academy. It was Friday morning, the absolute deadline for Jenna's school documents. I had been up all night, pacing my small living room, the cane clicking rhythmically, pain, consequence, pain, consequence. The clinic coordinator had called back. They could not guarantee the surgery with only $35,000. It was a firm $40,000 or I lost my slot. The pain flared up, giving me the final, necessary shove. Daniel had left me no option. He had made this a zero-sum game. If I was to walk, Jenna had to fall. I took a deep breath, the cold steel of self-preservation hardening my resolve. I hit call. When the admissions officer, a very polite woman named Ms. Reynolds, answered, I introduced myself, confirmed Jenna's name, and then, using the professional, flat tone I reserved for tax audits, I expressed a concerned interest in the completion of all required medical forms, specifically citing the tuberculosis clearance. I just want to ensure everything is in order, I stated smoothly. My son, Daniel, mentioned there was an issue with the timing of the updated lab work. Could you confirm that the file is 100% complete and compliant with Section 4C? There was a long pause on the line. I heard the rustling of papers. Every second felt like an hour. One moment, Mrs. Miller, Ms. Reynolds finally said. Then she returned, her voice distinctly cooler. It appears we are, in fact, still missing the updated PPD results. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. As the deadline is today, and this documentation is mandatory for all students, we unfortunately must. I won. The victory was immediate and bitter. I had secured my life, but at the cost of crushing a child's dream on the precipice of realization. I hung up before she could finish, unable to hear the official confirmation of Jenna's rejection. The moment the phone hit the table, the doorbell rang. It was Emily, Daniel's wife. She was standing there, not with the brittle smirk she wore the other night, but tear-streaked and looking utterly defeated. In her hands, she clutched a thick, folded envelope. "Sarah, I need to talk to you," she whispered, stepping inside. "It's too late, Emily," I said, my voice hollow. "It's done. I made the call." Her eyes widened in a flash of anguish. You blocked the enrollment?" She bowed her head, clutching the envelope tighter. "I knew it. Daniel said you wouldn't do it, but I knew you would." "What did you expect, Emily? He stole my ability to walk." She looked up at me, a genuine sorrow filling her eyes. "He did. And I let him. I'm sorry, Sarah. But that's why I'm here." She held out the envelope. "He didn't know I did this. I went to the bank this morning. I pulled out every penny of my retirement fund, my 401k and the small savings account I had hidden away for emergencies. It's $25,000. Not only the $20,000 he took, but an extra $5,000 to cover the difference for the clinic." I stared at the envelope, dumbfounded. The sheer desperation in her action, liquidating her retirement, hit me harder than Daniel's theft. "Why?" I finally managed. "Because I love Jenna, Sarah, but I also see what Daniel is becoming. He's reckless, entitled, and he uses people, even his own mother. He convinced me that we were entitled to your money, that you had to pay. But watching you stand there the other night, seeing the pain in your eyes, I realized he didn't just steal from you, he stole my peace. And I won't raise Jenna in a home where her father is a thief who crippled his own mother for a school badge. I won't let his greed ruin my conscience, too." She laid the envelope on the table. "Take the money. Get your surgery. I need you healthy. And I need you to understand that Daniel did this, not me, and certainly not Jenna. He put us all in this horrible position, and I'm making this right." She paused, then added the final, chilling detail. "And when Daniel finds out I used my retirement to replace the money he stole, money he thought was securely paying for Jenna's tuition, I'm leaving him. I filed the paperwork this morning. I'm taking Jenna and getting an apartment." She turned and left, disappearing as quickly and quietly as she had arrived. I was left alone with a full $25,000 check, the money for my surgery, and the sudden, devastating knowledge that the theft had blown up Daniel's entire life, his marriage, his daughter's private education, and his standing with me. I called the clinic immediately and confirmed the $45,000 transfer, securing the surgery. The operation went ahead as scheduled. I can walk now. Slowly, with physical therapy, but I walk. But the physical healing is nothing compared to the emotional scar. Daniel called me from an unknown number a week after the surgery. He was hysterical, accusing me of colluding with Emily, of destroying his life just to spite him. He said I was selfish, unforgiving, and cruel. I listened to his entire tirade until he ran out of breath. Then I said one thing: "You called me the worst mother in the world for choosing to walk. You stole my life. Emily chose her conscience and Jenna's peace over your greed. You are now alone with your choice, Daniel. I hope you can walk away from that." I hung up. I haven't spoken to Daniel since. Jenna is back in public school, excelling. Emily and I are speaking, slowly rebuilding a connection. The money is back, and my leg is healing. But the question remains: was I the villain for protecting myself, or was I simply the victim who was forced to defend her own life against the selfish demands of her own blood? Daniel lost everything because he took the $20,000. I lost a son because I insisted on keeping the $40,000. And I still don't know which loss hurts more.